Hey, what's up? Today, want to talk about this idea that we can gain cardiovascular fitness only from lifting weights. Now, last night, a client that Allie and I work with had some questions, and she's more her client, and asking some questions on maybe how to explain why. At best, this notion that you only have to lift weights to gain cardiovascular fitness is at best incomplete, or the definitions are a little bit different than conventional. And then, of course, it tracks all the way to completely erroneous, depending on, how you define those words. We're going to leave fat loss out of this discussion, because that's not fitness. That's a potential byproduct from a lot of different ways of training, which all have a lot of different ways to measure the cost of that training. Is it an efficient process? Is it sustainable? But being fit doesn't always have a direct link to fat loss or how much body fat that you may or may not carry. So let's leave that on the side. That's very valuable. Let's just say anything can burn body fat to a degree if you work hard enough, and then are coupling that with ideal nutrition strategies. Okay, so we'll put that over here in our back pocket. But in terms of lifting weights alone and counting that as cardio, let's talk about some of the things that actually we think we know happen, and why it doesn't add up to saying, I don't need to do this other stuff, I'm just lifting weights. Well, number one, just by start to think about lifting weights. You're in the car on the way to the gym, doing your little Instagram while you're driving. You're thinking about something that makes you angry. You're thinking about something that would drive certain parts of the nervous system. Your heart rate automatically goes up. So now we're thinking, oh, well, maybe that's a good thing. Heart rate goes up. I should be able to get into one of my zones in order to achieve certain fitness goals. Well, you're just thinking about it. You're not even doing anything, and your heart rate goes up. That in itself, you're not doing any mechanical work, so your heart is now working harder to a degree for zero activity. In a very, very acute stage, no big deal. This is actually somewhat valuable in the case if you're thinking like you're warming up, like you're going to warm up before you warm up just by thinking of the activity. But there's also a cost, because the systems of the body that are preparing you for this impending activity aren't free. And those are the types of things that can lead to more chronic issues, that like increasing your resting heart rate. If you're constantly angry, maybe I know something about that. If you're constantly putting yourself in these premonitions of activities that will require a high heart rate, it can lead to a chronic issue down the road. But ultimately, that in itself brings you to this higher heart rate in a very, very inefficient level. Inefficient defined by you're now increasing your heart rate and distributing blood throughout the body at a quicker pace, but for no reason. Like you don't need it at that point. It might be a good idea to ramp into it, but ultimately it's a very, very costly process. So now there is a degree of almost artificially generated, not artificial because of course it's still coming from the body, but it's not even related to the activity that you're doing. It's at a very, very high cost and probably not advantageous for a cardiovascular fitness effect. When we talk about conditioning, you're looking to condition your body. You're looking to put yourself in a situation for whatever an extended period of time would be for the adaptation, for the change that you're looking for. Do you want your heart rate to be increased from doing no work? That's what you're conditioning yourself to do. It's how people's blood pressures go up for no reason, and often we call that stress. Thinking about an aggressive training session is a form of stress that your body is going to begin to make adjustments and adaptations. That's number one. Number two, when you hold on or you carriage things that are very, very heavy, there's significant muscle contraction. And as a result of that significant muscle contraction, more so in the upper limbs than the lower limbs, there will then be increased TPR, total peripheral resistance. Remember, the vessels all go through your arms, your trunk, everywhere there's blood vessels. If you are creating tension, you now have to increase your cardiovascular measures to overcome that total peripheral resistance. So now the heart rate goes up. Oh, we think that's good. I'm getting into my zones. But again, you're doing it for a different reason than if you went for a run, elliptical, all of our different cyclic repeats. The other key to that is you're not able to do it long enough if you're actually trying to lift weights or train explosively. You can do it long enough if you're doing what other people would call cardio. So it's not so much that there's something wrong with creating this total peripheral resistance. When you hit a heavy deadlift, maybe your heart rate actually transiently goes up to 220 beats per minute for a few seconds, if that, and then you put the bar down and all of it has this very, very steep drop. That's not long enough to condition the body to be in those different ranges. And you're not returning to a lower, closer to recovered heart rate because you're fit. It's because you removed this incredibly unadapted stimulus of holding on to weight. So this is two reasons. One is a little bit more mechanical, and the other one is, call it neuroendocrine. I have to always remember not to use big fancy words, not because people can't understand, but because already we began, what do you even call fitness? What does that mean to you? And so I eliminated fat loss because that's not fitness. You can be incredible, you could have brilliant cardiovascular fitness and carry a significant amount of body fat. We see that in particular professional athletes and just in general. You can go and crush a stress test and be overweight, and then your cardiologist is like, oh, I don't know what to... Anyway, they're not always linked. Obviously, sometimes you are. You become a piglet because you don't work out. Your heart conditions the other direction. But thinking about it gets your heart rate up. Load carriage gets your heart rate up. Often the mediastinum is your chest, your trunk is compressed. But just by doing a bicep curl, you're compressing, and you have to overcome that. And if you just hold an isometric, your heart rate will start to increase. But ultimately, that is not enough of the variables and how you're achieving those variables in order to have a fitness effect. Now, here's where this kind of rubber meets the road to a degree. When your heart rate is very, very high, I'm going to try to draw this here so when hopefully it shows up here in the camera. Okay, I'm going to draw this brilliant picture of a heart, all right? And the heart, as we know, is divided in different quadrants, okay? And the left bottom, the left ventricle, which I'm going to say is over here, but depending how you look at it, this is the one that we're most interested in. That's where blood leaves. And when you have a very high heart rate, then what is happening is this area of the heart is going boom, 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 regardless of how it is achieved. Because if it is achieved from not lifting weights, you have an opportunity to remain in that stage long enough because you're not challenging these other systems that simply can't last that long. The problem is that when it goes so fast, it doesn't have the opportunity to get bigger and fill up with more blood. And that is typically a sign of a healthier heart. A healthier heart is one that has great elasticity. The muscle on the outside of the heart becomes more springy, so for any one given heart rate, it can grow and fill up with more blood. If it's going so fast, it doesn't have time to fill up. And this is where it's not possible to gain things like cardiac output and stroke volume based off of a lower heart rate. That might be a sign of fitness, where you can accomplish any given task with a lower heart rate rather than this extremely high one. Over time, you can actually train a heart to be able to get very, very extensible and punch really, really hard. But at some point, when you get above threshold, whatever that is for you, where you're no longer relying on as much oxygen, remember, you're always going to use all the energy systems, but ultimately, if your heart is going like this, it can't go like that. And that is why training with weights that in some degrees have this irrelevant increase in heart rate that doesn't even create adaptations, doesn't create changes in this part of the heart, it mechanically, it doesn't even have enough time in order to get big and extensible to fill up with more blood. So for one punch, you're able to get more blood out. When you can't do that, your other option is to just hit it harder, and you'll get the blood out there so you don't die. But that is not going to help you achieve fitness in most definitions. That model can maybe help you become more tolerant mentally to a degree of appreciating that discomfort. But once you're done, you're done. So maybe if you're able to hold it for a very, very high heart rate for 6 to 8 minutes, well, then you're going to get maybe better at maintaining power output or activity for 6 to 8 minutes. Nobody is lifting weights for 6 to 8 minutes. Now we have to then get into the discussion of, well, what's lifting weights? Because you can accomplish all levels of cardiovascular activity. You can shift towards all the different systems of the body with load. It just depends what load means to you. Clearly, if your muscles are conditioned to the point where carrying something doesn't challenge your muscles as much as the next person, well, then you're doing that. But again, you're going to need to be able to do this 20, 30 minutes at the minimum in order to create this type of effect, where you're giving the heart enough time to fill up and minimizing how fast it has to go. Now, just with anything, once you know the rules, then you break the rules. But to just say, I don't need to do cardio as defined by things that take 20, 30, 90 minutes to achieve, probably incomplete at best, completely erroneous at worst. You can't handle real weight for that period of time where there's enough of a stimulus to create these adaptations that we're talking about in the heart. So, look, there's going to be times that there is value of trying to maintain output for very, very high, long periods of time. I'm not sure that is the healthiest heart if you don't show up to that dance with a heart that is very, very springy and very, very extensible. We need them both. Again, it's not to suggest that every single person is in danger by lifting heavy. That's ridiculous. And it's not to suggest that we all have to go out and run 4 miles. But if we can appreciate how do you put all of these together and manage this robbing Peter to pay Paul process of training, even in the general population, more so for professional athletes, then I think we're nailing this. But to just say, I don't need to do cardio because I lift weights, that doesn't have significant merit based off of what I think we know. And I use my words very, very carefully because the moment somebody hears something that doesn't click with the words that they know, all the time is time to knuckle up. So keep that in mind. Another great ideas to put a lot of these things together. And I think we talked a lot about that on T equals R3. I've continued to talk about it in other these videos, etc. No, you do need to do something other than lifting weights if improving cardiovascular fitness is on the table. So hopefully that makes sense. Message with any kind of questions. I'll be happy to make another video. What we think we know about how that left ventricle, that bottom part of the heart, is impacted by the suggestion that I just need to lift weights.